But coming up next here on the AM show, we've got Voters' Voice. Are you voting for a party or a candidate? My colleague Benjamin Akakpo is live from the streets of Accra and speaking to ordinary Ghanaians on this.
Well, for us, we find ourselves here in Newtown, around the 37 station. It's 13 days to election 2020. We're trying to find out from ordinary people like you, how exactly are you going to vote and what will influence your vote? Is it going to be the person representing that political party, or is it going to be more of the political party itself? Now, interestingly, where we find ourselves today, it is just this road that separates Ayawaso Central, where you have Henry Quartey as Member of Parliament, and Ayawaso North to my left, where you have Yusuf Jaja as the Member of Parliament. So this morning, we're here, and we're going to be speaking to some of the people around to find out, give you, the voter, a voice. What do you think? Come along. So we're going to be interacting now. Let's start with this gentleman here. Hello, morning.
Morning.
What's your from?
Mpacho from Kwesi Manfo.
Kwesi Manfo. December 7, Abanobe to be.
Mpacho.
Na den na bemo den pote na obesi so a obeka say wait na meto aba no eye nipa na obehwe ana say eye party na obehwe say oh we me party nti meto amom.
Mpacho odika no madam ase. Na mom ye nimpa na osiso ana say nimpa na oloba no na mehwe madato aba. Ejuma oba menye biaye oni ntine moto aba no. Enye say me bohwe party ana say me bohwe nimpa no oloba no because say jumani ni o mai mu emi mo be ya me yire na me mba wo be ya bia won se boko ana asa mo nya bi mu da hwe ho no oni ntire moto aba yen se nimpa na oro ye we na mo hwe me da to aba
Enti enye nipa no na party no nso e
mpa to yen party ejuma me nipa no so ba na so de ejuma ba ono na mo hwe me da ma to aba ma no
na mo asem bisa hakrama o wo be ye den hu se ne oho dada no ana se ne oba no ne betimi aye ne awo pe no
me wa Ghana nti de okoso bia minim nti de a oba woka a mehu se wo nni so no me nyo no nti na me de be ye adwuma nti me de oba mehu se oba ba ye no ana se wa ye bi me mehu no ono nti na me to aba me da ama no
nti wo be pese mu na bebi a wo hwa a ebe bua wo no e ho na wo de wa ba no be ko
sa pepepe
yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. And for him, he is basically saying that he's going to be voting based on what will, earn his family their keep. Basically, bread and butter issues. And he doesn't really care about the personality or the party, so to speak. Where he feels he's going to be getting his benefits from, that's where he's going to vote. Let's move on to the next person. Yeah, Macho. Pacho, if I was saying. Kwame Usu. Pacho, December 7, Obeto Aba. Na den na obesi so ato aba no nipa na obehwe na aka say oh we ne ho ye fe ana say bibia ana say party no
omutu no ene mehwe so ne mato aba
pacho obetimi esi so
ehunu ene mehwe so mato aba
mpuntu development
ene mehwe so mato aba
enti say mo hwe mo ha say na for example Ayawaso North na Yusuf Jaja na asefo na mpuntu no hu bi sa
menye ha na meto aba osu
otu aba osu enti e ho no niam ben na obehwe a obesi so
se me hu bibi ewo ayi na sitire no say big change aba akora was no you see akora be standing no big change aba nti ebi so a meto ama no
nti wo pa che say bebi a nipa na owo ho no oya de nti say wo nya ya onto aso
o dabi onde onya de different person aba no meto ama no
so before na obeto ama no. For him, he votes in the Osu area. He's not been very specific which constituency, but he is saying that he's going to be voting based on what performance he has actually seen. Let's come to the next person here. Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Nyamenadum. Pacho Efrozen.
Kweku Anafo.
Kweku Anafo. December 7, Obeto Aba.
Oh, yeah, Moto Aba. Oh, abato ne de so far as I'm Ghana in the same to aba. Na NDC aba, MPP aba, yehu changes ayewu. Nti no this time we had we be ka say party ne to aba. Yi pro aba no do oba ya obehu no. Mpuntu ebokoso na ewo asetem kakra ebokoso no. O da hwe no da to aba because NDC aba wo mko na nanso ba no madarom yama o yen kakra o yi no ne ntene efese yes an to no so na mpuntu na enko so but this will be na do we so on to aba da wa hu no na me say wo hwe so da to aba nti ni san sam no to aba
enti no wo afa no eye nipa no na wo hwe ana say eye party no na wo hwe.
Well, share that party na share that but me the abane ya ye fi say eboboa no on e say ye Naija ho de support because party ne the so party ne ya de so ka chen so ya the next time no why ni ntemi da me fa party to aba the course so aye mama no am da hwe so to aba
nti mpuntu juba na wo hwe.
Oh yes, mpuntu juba na me hwe because see ran ya hwe ni yema ba kumenu bi o wa tumi ti e bre so that say yema bi o wa abane ya if you say boy because free HS is a boy because na high because we offer to be go school for school fees bra for but ni na at the end of the day no a boy nto no san na see etumi hwe na ade no tumi empeja because e twene san a na de bia na yakoya chi nta see etumi support na yama koso
nti wo wa fam no se na wo kana che se wo dwen se anhwe a ukoto fa baby a ebe ye se bibi te se free SHS no o twe aba echi no.
Oh yes, of course, because I don't know the way peja no I say to me bo no wie so that say because e ho no went to my no bi aba na oye it don't to me confuse me say wo ba oba ni ye wa bra went to man start into the one start no e say bo no to me wie
nti che se wo say no nia o mampani we twem John Dramani Mahama the o kan say oba obeto aso no che se wo afam no wonyi ni sa
o menyi ntumi sa because wa ye bi obi nka so wa ye bi but the ono nso ye no so ese no so ye bo no nso oyesi ni ehu me no de wa tumi abo ma na ye nta ese tumi to aba no so de oye no tumi wie
na mesero ejuma ben sa na wo ye.
Oh me driver ha my driver ha more than 30 years but aban bia ba emwa bia nche dem so that say aban bia ba sa no ko but now no we know self education aba no eboyan drivers because at least oba botuma ye free ni bi yama nkitikiti wo eboyan ntole de kwa bia so na say support no tumi ewie na adwuma wo.
And that is a gentleman, he's a driver here, and he is saying that for him, what has impacted his life is free SHS, and that based on that, he would want to, cast his vote in a certain direction because he feels that will allow for continuity as far as that policy is concerned. Let's speak to some other people. Hello, Margie.
Yeah.
What's your first name?
Yawofe.
Yawofe. Name? Abato aye beto no December 7 no why been say obeto abana
you meto abapa
nti abana o beto no den e na ubesi so aka say oh say nti e na meto abano
ne nti a me pese meto abane say ma hwe binku ma hwe nifa ma huni a e wose ba bia me di ma abako do me to abawo do me kwa binya enti ehọ na me development na ewo ho no en na me gira so na mato ma ba ewo ho ensa
wo constituency no do me kwa benya awaka no ebi no mo say ye nhu hwe the same situation na MP na wo ho ache ebi nso si da ebi ne ma ekoso wa dwenche ne say
oh no kranya kopanim ye nhu hwe sania ye nhu se MP fo bi ni nam ni ade omo ye mamputunjuma ne ye mantem no ye ho ye hu hwe nti ye besesam me particular de mesesam na ni pa foforo aba
nti no ya wotato aba and say this current abaya ye betu wo hwe nipa no say oh we me pa na asem nti meto ama no and say wo hwe party no
oh me hwe nipa no me party no na me hwe ni me mfa de say wo ye party bia na party e wo betumi aye adwuma no nko ade a meto ama sa entity se beto aba no ma na me hu say enya afi be sa ba biom na ya hwe ne betumi aye sa me hwe say wo wa na so wa nipa no betumi aye adwuma no na chi na e wose yedi
nti me hwe ate say obi te say wo no ya ofe obetumi aye skirt and blouse pa obetumi ato afa ama MP no ato afa ama president and anya sa
I know the me ho iduru a da me
so that is Yawofe, and he is saying that he is actually not in this constituency. He is in Domikwabenya, and he is saying his member of parliament is not doing what he would want to see, and so come December 7, he is going to vote against, the parliamentary candidate for that party, or should should I say, the member of parliament. And from what he is saying, from what he is suggesting, it is possible that he could actually vote for a member of parliament from one party and maybe a presidential candidate from a different party. Let's move on to speak to some other people. Hello, good morning.
Morning, sir.
What's your friend saying?
What's your friend, Tete Robinson?
Tete?
Robinson.
Yo, about on December 7, over to be.
Pachame to be.
They ain't in our beto. Then ebe pin ebe Kenya o amu akoto aba.
The ain't a big Kenya me met to Abanise. My share been cooling if but media meaning baby I met to Abana alcohol. And as he says, so moreover, no, you school cry to ye, and yet, ain't ye papa or no about Baswa. Ye may Buna Abanusa, ye be school, ye may you Jumaya.
It's just all the wafa one that a membruno a Jumana more share.
Sir, I'm
saying a Jumano wouldn't be there.
Oh, me were Jumaya Bamian who actually. Minian Ketwa to actually almost at the 70s. Aye.
Enti, Obeshendi Pano, na watu abanamano, and I obeshe party no, na watu abanamano. Or party.
Me party.
Enti party na obeshe atu abanana. I say, a bit me about obeshe say, wait, or party no munso, Ninsano Juma and Sweni.
Sir Pepe.
Yo, yeah, that's it. When ya chicken como and no paid.
My colleague Benjamin Akakwo there live from Newtown asking if people would vote for a candidate or a political party. Let's have a conversation on the back of that. My guests have been listening to Voters' Voice. Dr. Nansata Yakubu is a development consultant. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning, Movi.
Great. So let me just ask for a quick reaction because you've been listening.
Thank you. It's been a very interesting trend to see people on the streets, give framing to what we would theorize usually. Practically, they just said it all. There are people who are going to vote based on interest representation. There are people who are going to vote based on policy direction. There are people who are voting for the party. There are people who are going to vote depending on the personalities and who they deem is fit to lead their interest, going forward into the future. So everybody seems to reflect, to the particular. And if you also listen closely, you will realize that most of them reduced it to their communities, which in this case is the constituency level. Nobody was talking about the national, level kind of representation. The person will tell you, I don't vote here. I vote in this other place. So everybody is able to identify where I vote, what the issues are, where I live, and why I would vote in one particular direction or the other. So they were very interesting reflections from the street.
The tricky thing with our kind of politics is if you win as a presidential candidate, you need a good number of parliamentarians to work with because you have to take majority of your ministers also from parliament. How do you, especially, and I'm building on what one person said, that my member of parliament is not doing anything, so I'm going to vote against her. What do you think the strategy is? I see, for instance, the president taking his time to go to a lot of these places and showcasing the parliamentary candidates to the audience each time. At this point, with 13 days to the polls, what should be the strategy? Are you selling yourself, or you're selling the members of parliament, the candidates? Because you can't be a president alone.
Yes. What political parties would typically do is to try to sell both the president and the parliamentary candidate to the electorate. Why they do this is that they both reflect the same ideologies. They both reflect the same political formation, the interest, the kind of policies they want to bring. What the president of that party is intending to implement is the same that the MP is going to implement. So when it comes to issues of policy, interest, and all that, then they do the same thing. Where it gets tricky is when it comes to issues of social integration, because there are places where the president will be less popular than the member of parliament and vice versa. There are also places where the member of parliament is keenly accepted and the president is not. So there are strategies that a member of parliament can use when you are getting to the last stretch. This one, for instance, we are on the final stretch now. So by now, your own internal structures should let you know what the barometer, kind of is. And I wouldn't say you are going to throw your party under the bus or whatever, but in the interest of the greater parties, they also need the seat in parliament. So when it gets to this last few days, yes, you do promote your presidential candidate, all right, but you have to put yourself out more, and then go along with it. What you can serve to do is visibly, the visuals in the constituency should reflect a lot of you and the president, and then also reflect you specifically in a lot of the other areas. And then you sell your message. And basically your message is a secondary one derived from your national message, either your manifesto or your own personal message in the constituency. Because even if, for instance, you are talking about roads, if the particular political party says that we are going to make roads, you live in the constituency, so you know which road from which area to what area it's going to be the first in a scale of preference, and then which one comes to. So you go back and you interpret it in the local context. So getting to a few days to the elections, you need to put yourself more and then your president behind you, rather than from the very beginning where you tout more. And don't forget, by now, most of the presidential candidates have also finished their rounds where they go and raise your hand and all that. So there are strategies from the beginning, what you do. In the middle, by the time the presidential candidates come around, how you accelerate. And in this last round, you need to just go all out and put yourself out there. Because technically, people tend to vote you and your president. That's the traditional notion. So putting yourself out there means that inherently you are putting your presidential candidate also out there. That's the technical way to explain it.
Great. Are people more critical of the parliamentary candidates?
People are usually critical of the parliamentary candidates because they see you are the link between them and government. You are the link between them and also the seats of power. So what happens is any development that they don't see in the constituency, they tend to attribute it to lack of, improvement from the parliamentary candidate.
But Dr. Yakubu, that's not exactly true, is it? Because there's the chief executive officer.
Exactly. The MP is not supposed to be the locus for development, but unfortunately, that is how our politics is turning out to be. People translated that my MP has done nothing. There's no road in my constituency. And when you tell them the MP's role is not to build roads, they tell you, well, the MP came here and said he will build the road. So we have a big role, an advocacy role to play in letting the public and how the members of parliament themselves relate to the public and selling their message. Because the point is, if you don't go and say that and your opponent goes to say that, your opponent might just pick you. So people are comfortable enough to hear that. So I think in this election, we've had a lot of MPs, try to roll back on those kind of pronouncements and let people understand that it is our role to go to parliament to help you to be able to secure, develop. But it is not like we come to do the direct, implementation. And then they'll say, yes, when you were looking for the vote, you came to say you do it. Now you have won, you are saying something else. So by and by, we need to start, rolling back on things like that. But that is how people do. They hold them ransom to those kind of pronouncements. I
made a few observations because I've been going around and hanging around, particularly with some of the female candidates. In Wage Agbawe, I realized that the Member of Parliament has close links with the Chief Executive, and they are practically moving together and are on the same page also with development in the constituency. Lejakuku doesn't have a female, but there's a male who also has a very close relationship with the Chief Executive. And so they're all walking along the same lines. Now, there's a challenge if you are like an opposition MP in the constituency, in the municipality where the Chief Executive is obviously a representative of the president and of this government. How do you then showcase this last minute what you've been able to achieve within the constituency so that people can vote for you?
There's a certain reason why we have those dynamics within our local government structure and how this relates to the national politics. Unfortunately, over the years, we keep to still have that problem. When your party is in power and the chief executive is not from, the ruling party. The chief executive can be from the ruling party, but everybody else, whether the dynamics are quite. We keep having that problem. However, I must say that the way the district assembly concept works, irrespective of who is in power, there will be a certain level of development in the area, irrespective, whoever is in power. The assemblies work in a way that they will still continue to institute and progress, because the local government structure is totally different from how the national politics work. Where what you are saying come into place is where flagship projects especially are concerned. So for instance, if there are supposed to be, let's say, 20 toilets in a particular area, so what can happen is, by virtue of the fact that the member of parliament has direct access to, let's say, the chief executive, who maybe leans in a way to that particular party, then the siting of those toilets are then in contention. So you can say, okay, this area is not typically people who are on our side, practically. So let's take it to, this area. But then, in any case, what you should remember is that everybody in that constituency is still a Ghanaian. So wherever these toilets are going to be sited, people are still going to end up benefiting from it. But yes, indeed, when the chief executive and the member of parliament are able to work together, then you have very good dynamics. But I must say that there are also other areas where people are different, but they do work together. Because, there's nothing you can do about that. You will have to develop your own dynamics, at the local level. You don't just throw it and say, okay, I'm an opposition member of parliament, so I cannot work there. They do work together, because don't forget that there's also a percentage of money that they have to get from the district assembly for their own project. And the district assembly never denies members of parliament these things. So it's not a case that is so bad. Okay. Just when it's flagship programs, it can be a bit complicated, but they do get some work done at the end of the day.
Well, just finally, what do you see happening in 2020? I have heard quite some people say that they're not happy with their members of parliament, even though they're not going to touch the presidential candidates. Do you, I don't know, has any research been done? Are you following any research, for instance, that says that we're going to see a lot of skirts and blouse?
Not necessarily. There've been a lot of quick short surveys. There've been the Afrobarometer reflections. There've been some work that women groups are also making and stuff like that. I think why we are having this conversation is because the two major political parties have a chunk of independent members of parliament, people who were either members of parliament or wanted to be failed in their bid to win at the primaries and have decided to go independent. Now, why that becomes interesting dynamics is that it could be that at the local level, these were preferred candidates. Don't forget the nature of the vote for a member of parliament means that sometimes who the party wants is not necessarily who the community thinks is going to be, because of the structure of the delegate system. So sometimes the delegates will vote one particular member, and then the party people feel, no, this is the man that or woman that we want to lead us. So that is where it's been interesting. And they have quite a chunk, more than 20 each or so for both parties. And these are sometimes in areas where they traditionally will win. So what you have is you are going to have your opponent make up the margins, in those areas. If you have a member who says, okay, I'm not a member of your party anymore, I'm going as an independent candidate, which means that the person is not formally affiliated to you. But we all know most of these independent candidates also have leanings. So they could be in one party or the other. And that means the same voter base of the party is going to vote for both members, both the formal person you are presenting and the informal person who is saying, I'm independent. So they go and they split votes. And one vote for your opponent is one vote too many in elections. So that is why we are hearing that. However, I must say that a lot of people at the end of the day can decide that, you know what, my party is sick. So I am not, changing from my party. I am going to vote my party. So usually for the presidential, they can decide that they stay with their party. But there are other areas where we are also even hearing challenges with the presidential, where some are saying, well, I am not going to stay with my party on the presidential, but I'm going to vote for the member of parliament for my party. So I think 2020, just like other elections prior, it's going to be difficult to predict, to say that. But I think we are going to have a lot of dynamics around the independent parties, political candidates that have emerged, especially this electoral cycle. Because for some of them, I mean, you just have absolute no idea why. In areas where maybe for the ruling party, they have been able to put in unopposed candidates. You might say people are peeved, they didn't have the opportunity to contest. So maybe, but in areas where you actually contested and lost, but you still feel cheated by the system, and then you still present yourself, so there are whole dynamics that we have to watch out for. And I think one of the areas to watch is all the areas that we have independent candidates and how that will impact the overall national ballot.
Well, thank you very much for the thoughts that you share with us. Dr. Nansata Yakubu is a development consultant on Voters' Voice today, where we ask the question, are you voting for a political party or a candidate? What's your own voice? Stay with us. We've got show business coming up with Caddy.